Every week, Hillsdale College President Larry Arnn joins Hugh Hewitt to discuss great books, great men, and great ideas. This is Hillsdale Dialogues, part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. More episodes at podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you find your audio.
Good morning, glory, and evening, grace, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. That music means we're in the last broadcast hour of the week. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel or listening on the Salem Radio Network or one of our great affiliates, we are in episode 20 of our series on Winston Churchill's World War II memoirs, which is really a series about World War II since he was there from the beginning to the end. And Dr. Larry Arnn is my guest, president of Hillsdale College, all things Hillsdale at hillsdale.edu. All of our prior dialogues in the series, the first 19, are collected at hughforhillsdale.com. All of our dialogues going back to 2013 are collected at hughforhillsdale.com. But everything Hillsdale is at hillsdale.edu. Dr. Arnn, we move on to the tragedy of Poland. I've only been to Poland once. I love their Pope that they gave my church, but I've only been there once. Have you spent much time there?
I have been once, yeah, and I spent 2 days there. I had a great visit, by the way. It's a fantastic place. It's one of those mini victim countries in Eastern Europe, dominated in alternation between mostly Russia and also Germany. And the Polish people are proud and great, and there's lots of wonderful about them.
After Prime Minister Carney gave his speech in Davos 3 weeks ago, I went and looked up. Canada spends less than 2% of their GDP on national defense, and they haven't spent 2% in consecutive years since before the Soviet Union fell. Poland right now is spending 4.7% of their GDP, which is only $1 trillion, 1/4 of Canada's GDP, and they spend 2.5 times as much. The Poles will not get rolled again, I think. I think their memory of 1939 is too sharp.
Yeah, well, it comes up in this volume, we passed it now, that when the Czech deal was made, Poland was making demands at the expense of Czechoslovakia, because we're carving things up, let's get some. Everybody, a lot of people did that. A lot of countries did that. A lot of people did that. So they're weak, and they're attacked from, what the Molotov, that was Stalin's foreign minister, Ribbentrop, that was Hitler's foreign minister, pact in 1939 is about. It's about expanding a cooperation that had been going on between the Soviet Union and Imperial Germany after the First World War, and continuing some under Hitler, although he proved to be, as he often announced in public, their inveterate enemy. And they all knew they were going to be enemies, but they made a deal. And the immediate point of the deal was Poland. They agreed to split it up between them. And Victor Hansen tells the story at greater length and better than Churchill tells in this chapter. Stalin was very cagey, and in many ways cagier than Hitler. And so they made this deal, but then the Soviets hung back and let the Germans do most of the fighting in Poland. And Hitler was wondering aloud, where's Stalin? Where's the Soviet army? They're supposed to be helping us, right? Well, they came in and scooped up the spoils, which is more or less what they did in regard to the defeat of Japan late in the Second World War. So, yeah, they've got those two mighty powers that have taken turns oppressing them from time immemorial, and they've now agreed to carve up Poland, and they do it in a hurry.
In this chapter, on page 403 is one of the most famous Churchill lines. I didn't expect to find it here. I thought it had been in his speech, where he writes a note to the cabinet laying out Hitler's many options. And then on October 1, he gives a famous address. I cannot forecast to you the action of Russia. It is a riddle wrapped in a mystery inside an enigma, but perhaps there is a key. That key is Russian national interest. Does that still apply, Dr. Arnn, do you think?
Oh, yeah, very much. Yeah. Russia, there's a very smart guy who's a international relations professor, a Hillsdale graduate. I have not known him well. He graduated in 2000, so I gave him his degree, but I didn't live in town yet. And I was talking to him the other day, and he said some wise things that I agreed with. And the main thing is Russia is a thing made out of very strong material, and it ain't going anywhere, right? It's got a way about it. It's old. It's stubborn. It's got a very strong sense of itself. It's a tragic place, people with a strong tragic sense. And so Churchill always believed that communism was an imposed theory on the places where it settled. He thought this, I'll say this in a minute. And so he thought that if the place was real, it couldn't be made real. It could only be distorted by communism. And so, and Russia is a very real place. There's a memo Truman is writing to Churchill, alarmed about communism in China. And Churchill, Churchill, first of all, Britain is very weak by this time, in the early 1950s. And he doesn't want the United States distracted way off to Asia more unduly. And he writes in a memo, and Truman has written him about the dangers of communism. And Churchill writes in a minute, I've seen this, I've held this in my hand. China is very old. Communism is very new. So,
well, 3 weeks ago, Xi Jinping eliminated the top leadership of the People's Liberation Army, and it stunned China watchers. I'm not a China watcher. I rely on other people to tell me what's going on there. I don't know. But it is clear to me he's a lot more of an emperor than he is a commissar, even though he's a real thoroughgoing Leninist. I don't know that being an emperor and being a Leninist are incompatible. I don't know that Putin thinks of himself as a czar, but he sure acts like a czar. And so I think what you're saying, Russia doesn't change much, no matter what's going on. And I have taken to, this is an aside to an aside, I have taken to listening to War and Peace. And having read it, I can't read it again. I'm going to listen to it so I can get the names down. And you can do a chapter at a time. But it is so fabulously old. Have you ever taught War and Peace or Tolstoy?
No, read it. But the guy who teaches, he doesn't, I don't know who teaches Tolstoy. Somebody does. Somebody teaches Tolstoy here. But we've got a big-time Dostoevsky guy. Justin Jackson is his name. And he's, a hilarious guy, but he's also a very powerful teacher.
He's funny and he's a Dostoevsky guy? That's not immediately intuitive.
Yeah. His great thing is really, he teaches medieval English here. You learn to read and write medieval English at Hillsdale College if you want to. And but he's an interesting guy.
Pause right there, Dr. Arnn. I'll be back with you. Dostoevsky, I just can't believe there's anyone who can make it humorous. It's so bleak. David Allen White used to go on our cruises with us. He also has lectured at Hillsdale before he passed away last year. And he taught Dostoevsky one year on a cruise, a Hugh cruise. And everyone loved the teaching, but there wasn't a yuck in the 10 days that we were at sea because it's just not, I just can't imagine. I'll have to go take that class in the next time I visit Hillsdale, which will be soon. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt with Dr. Larry Arnn. The Hillsdale Dialogue is digressing because I really can't believe, Dr. Arnn, you just said in the last segment that you've got a professor up there who can make Dostoevsky fun. And I'm coming in the doubter class.
I sat in on his class on the Brothers Karamazov a month ago when they were doing the great chapter on the Grand Inquisitor. And that's one of the most famous chapters in all literature.
Yes.
It's very dramatic, but you get a sense of the cosmic tragedy of Russia. The characters in it, they're all archetypes of something Russian. One is a naive young man, they're brothers. These brothers, Karamazov, is their family name. One is a naive young priest, very idealistic. One is a kind of intellectual, somewhat nihilistic. Dad is a deal maker and a bit dishonest. And it's a dysfunctional family. But they do, there's this, in this chapter, Jesus, the brother Ivan, tells a story. The chapter is him telling a story. And the substance of the story is Jesus comes back, not for the second coming, but just for a visit. And everybody loves him. And Jesus, by the way, in the whole chapter, never speaks. He just does some things. And one thing he does is raise a little girl from the dead. He comes upon a funeral procession. Talitha cum, rise, a little girl. And then he's arrested by the grand officer of the Inquisition. And most of the chapter is a speech by the grand officer of the Inquisition saying, tomorrow I'm going to burn you. The Inquisition is going to put you to death because you made a terrible mistake when you were in the desert being tempted by the devil. Because if you had said yes to his 3 appeals, which is give you bread, call a host to save you if you jump off a mountain, and make you king of all you survey, you would have given people what they want. But instead you disappointed them. And they're lost. You were too interested in their freedom. And so we have fixed that. We have taken away their freedom, and now they're happy. And taking away their freedom also required that we become their conscience, because we tell them what to do, and because we excuse them from their sins. We bear the world's burden of sin now. You refuse to do it. You left them free. And we're going to burn you tomorrow. Now, first of all, that strange and marvelous mind who thought that speech up, Dostoevsky, wowie. But that's a reflection of a people, too. Everybody longs for freedom. And Jesus, I learned, one of the things I learned is that in the Gospels, Jesus will do this miracle, and then he'll tell people not to talk about it.
Yes.
Don't tell anybody. And I've always wondered why. Why? Well, I think what Dostoevsky is saying is he's leaving us free. It won't just be miracles and demonstrations. There has to be some of that. But there has to be a teaching, and you have to believe it. And there has to be suffering by me. You have to believe that, right? So that's leaving us free. And the Russians they reproach that some, even while recognizing the greatness of freedom. And
I think when we did Tocqueville, I believe we spent time on the chapter where he said there are 2 great powers in the world, Russia and America. And as between them, everything will fall. As to the future of the world, and he's writing in the 20s, 30s, that between those 2 countries, everything will be decided for the foreseeable future. He didn't have China on the mind. It's really 3 countries, but those still remain the 3 big players. Those are the hegemons. And I don't know what happens after Putin or Xi. It's impossible really to say. It's nice to have a constitution because we know what happens after Trump is we have an election. That is a preferable way to go about things, in my view.
Oh, yeah.
One more question on Russia. I read just this morning, they've suffered 1.1 million casualties in Ukraine since the invasion under Biden, and they're not going to stop. When do they run out of gas, Larry? I mean, this could go on forever.
Well, you got to figure they're very resilient. And, first of all, 1.1 million compared to their casualties in this First and Second World War, that's nothing. Second World War was north of 20 million, 25 million, right. Something like that. I mean, incredible number. And if you add in the civilian casualties, you get up around 50. And then, how many people did Stalin kill?
Not as many as Mao. A lot, but not as many as Mao.
Stalin admitted to Churchill over dinner that 8 million had died in Ukraine.
Wow.
In the
kulaks,
Churchill,
when the collectivization happened.
And what Stalin was, Lincoln said that Henry Clay was his beau ideal of a statesman. Stalin is in some ways the beau ideal of a tyrant, because his way of killing more people than Hitler killed. In the case of the Ukraine, all he did was ship all the food out of the Ukraine to other parts of Russia, mostly Moscow, and then let them starve over the winter. All he had to do was take the food away and forbid them to travel.
Yeah, the Irish famine was a sad accident that Great Britain did not respond to, but the famine of the 1930s in Ukraine was engineered to destroy the kulaks. I mean, Stalin is a monster. Yeah. He's just an absolute monster. But I think Putin gets some inspiration from him.
Oh, yeah. Well, the Tsar Nicholas II, who was shot by the Bolsheviks, he was a very foolish man. He did very imprudent things, or he could have stopped that. At least if you're going to believe Solzhenitsyn's great history of that, volumes collected as the Red Wheel, one of them still to come out. The Bolshevik Revolution succeeded by a hair's breadth.
Yep.
Could have all been different. And that's a very important lesson, by the way, because the doctrine of the Bolsheviks is that it's inevitable. See? And if you just read the history, you see that it was not.
Far from it.
Few better decisions would have never happened. And there were many opportunities for those decisions to be made by the Tsar and by Kerensky and others who came later. And the point is, though, the Tsars were very strong, very fierce. And was it safe to defy Peter the Great or Catherine the Great?
And they were micromanagers. They're down in the details of who gets a commission in the Hussars. They are not delegators at all. Okay, we'll come right back to Tyrants for $50 on Jeopardy. Don't go anywhere, America. The Hillsdale Dialogue is going to continue right after this on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Hello, this is Jeremiah Regan, Executive Director of Online Learning here at Hillsdale College, and I have some great news. We've brought Hillsdale's incredibly popular free online courses to the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. And our next series is The American Left, From Liberalism to Despotism, a course taught by Associate Professor of Politics Kevin Slack and Hillsdale President Larry P. Arnn. After listening to all 11 episodes, you'll have a deeper understanding of what has happened to America in the past 60 years and what we can do about it today. The Hillsdale College Online Courses podcast, hosted by Online Learning Marketing Director Juan Davalos and me, expands Hillsdale's mission to provide all who wish to learn the education necessary to increase happiness and to preserve the civil and religious liberties of America. We want you to be a part of it at podcast.hillsdale.edu. Subscribe now to the Hillsdale College Online Courses podcast to hear new episodes every week with additional commentary and insights from our team. Go to podcast.hillsdale.edu to learn more. That's podcast.hillsdale.edu.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Hillsdale Dialogue underway. All things Hillsdale at hillsdale.edu. All the dialogues at hughforhillsdale.com. Back onto the main road, what we're about, Dr. Arnn. I want to move on into chapter 25. Poland is conquered quickly in Churchill's memoir. And he doesn't say that it was foolish for Great Britain to give it a guarantee. He just notes that they had the guarantee and then Great Britain was obliged to write. The next chapter is the war cabinet problem. And here, I really wanted to ask you about this in the context of Hillsdale College. He writes that there is the usual conflict between long-term and short-term policy, which rises in intensity in wartime. In other words, he's got this memo output that's prodigious, and he's telling everyone, every time you decide to put something off 3 years, you're hurting today. And every time you decide to do something today and invest resources, you're hurting 3 years from now. Does that resonate with a college president?
Oh, yeah, sure. And, part of life, and, if you're, I'm involved in a pretty big enterprise and have been for a long time now. And it's grown a lot. It's very big now. And a whole lot of people run it. And there's always a war between the immediate and the long term. And the immediate is easier to see than the long term. And so, there's a tendency for your focus to collapse to the immediate things about you. And sometimes that's necessary and right. We just got to do this right now. I mean, in 2020, when the COVID thing came, we basically didn't do anything except figure out about COVID for 9 or 10 months. It happened in spring break. And the question is, the kids are scattered to the winds. What are we going to do about next week? Right? And I hardly slept that week trying to figure out about this stupid thing. Can we have college? And we decided we couldn't. They couldn't come back. They couldn't travel. So then we spent hard time thinking about the immediate question was commencement, because I was determined we would have commencement in the summer. We did. But, under threat from the governor and the attorney general. And in the fall, are we going to have college in the fall? And I remember one day I said, at Hillsdale College, the temper is, we're very determined people and we serve a high cause and we're ready to fight. And I learned from Winston Churchill, you actually don't want to fight. You want to avoid it if you can, because we're having college here, right? That's not fighting. And so this time, I think it might be the only time I've done this, I said they are directly interfering with the operations of the college, and it is unnecessary, and they lack the proper power to do it. We're going all the way. And everybody applauded. That meant the lawyer got ready and everybody got ready. Now we're going to do it. And that means we got to figure out about health and safety and the legal strategy and what will the parents think and what will, in other words, the focus narrowed to that question. Can we actually have college? And what most people did, there was a meeting of a group of college presidents that I have to cooperate with. There's only one. And I like them, and I do cooperate with them regularly. And the first guy who spoke up said, well, we really just need about this COVID. We just need to know two things. We need to know what the government recommends, and we need to know what other colleges are doing. And I am now, and was then, the senior man on that panel. And I said, I do not need to know either of those things. Just like you, everybody laughed. They expect me to do crazy things. And the chairman, a friend of mine, Kathy Fell, I've just named her on Me Too. She said, what do you need to know? I said, I figured that out. I said, I need to know if the kids are going to die.
That's it.
I said, that's it. Everything else is, I don't need to know if the grown-ups are going to die. Because all I have to do is a one-line memo, which I had already done, saying, if you're afraid of this, stay home, and we'll pay you and find a way for you to work. Because they're grown-ups too, and I don't know more about this than they do. And,
that actually connects.
Way, almost nobody.
That actually connects to the first thing that Churchill does outside of the Admiralty, is he gets on the board Lindemann. And I'll tell you why that matters when we come back. Don't go anywhere, America. Dr. Larry Arnn and I will continue with the Hillsdale Dialogues. All things Hillsdale at hillsdale.edu. They're all collected at hughforhillsdale.com. Come right back. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt with Dr. Larry Arnn, president of Hillsdale College. All things Hillsdale at hillsdale.edu. Sign up for Imprimis. All the Hillsdale Dialogues are collected at hughforhillsdale.com. Dr. Arnn, we went to break. I mentioned Professor Lindemann, the prof, and the first thing that Winston Churchill did when he returned to the Admiralty after so many years. He brings Lindemann in, the prof, the guy, and he assigns him a dozen statisticians and economists who would pay no attention except to the real things. He wants them thinking about what to do, not watching what other people are doing. Real things. It's a pretty interesting full circle there with your COVID.
You have to make in life, you have to make a strategic plan, and you have to cope with today. And it's very hard to do both those things. And how much time you spend on each of them is a question of prudence. That means it depends on the circumstances. You know, right now at Hillsdale College, it's late January. We're having a pretty good year, which means, very good, really. Except, is it going to be great? We don't know yet. Won't know for 2 or 3 months, probably. And so when I know that in 2 or 3 months, my plans for next year will congeal. I mean, I know we're going to have college, and I know we're going to grow, and I know we're going to, God granting. But how much? What are we going to take on? I don't know yet, but I'm thinking about it. And then what do I have to hope to get done in the next 5 years? I know the answer to that. We have a plan about that.
And that's like his destroyers. Churchill knew right away. He needed more destroyers. That was the one thing he knew on page 417. He never mentions aircraft carriers in this chapter. It is as yet not fully formed in his mind that they will change the way that war is waged forever, or at least for the next 50 years or 75 years. But he knows he needs destroyers because there are U-boats. So that's the immediate.
Even if he had known fully about the power of the aircraft carrier, that would not have changed that decision.
Correct.
Because the point is, the utmost particular is we got to eat.
Yeah.
And they might be able to stop us. So step one, get dinner. We're getting hungry.
It's a fabulous, at this remove, it must have been terrifying, the prospect of not having supplies for Great Britain. It must have been terrifying because we're not in the war for 2.5 more years. We're not showing up and we can't get involved. And they rely on the empire. They've got Australia and Canada and other people. But if they can't get there because of U-boats, everybody on the island will starve. Everybody. It must have been terrifying.
Churchill had been saying for 25 years, 30 years, let me think of the first time, longer than that. He'd been saying Britain is in an artificial situation. It's a major power and a huge nation, and it cannot grow its own food. And so when you think about trade and the seas and the Navy and everything, you have to remember that. His main case against socialism was it will starve us to death. We won't be able to produce, we won't have anything to trade, and we cannot grow our own food. You see? Yeah. Now, America is not in that condition. That's a big difference, right? Keir Starmer is over there in China today, I think.
Yep.
God knows what he's going to do. It might be like Carney, because they're all mad at Trump, and they're looking for a way for Britain to be prosperous enough for them to win elections and continue their socialist.
The price will be so high. Let me close by asking you about lying, because Churchill, at the conclusion of this chapter, advises Neville Chamberlain to tell the French that the Brits will aim to provide 55 divisions, because he can't say, we'll fight on the land and you fight on, the Brits will fight on the sea and you fight on the land, because I do not like the idea of having to continue the war single-handed. But he's making it clear he knows they're not going to get to 55 divisions. So is that prudence, or is that just simply sometimes sovereigns must mislead?
No. I mean, first of all, the alliance with France, remember, Churchill thought hard about that in 1929. Do we want to tie ourselves to them because we'll be dragged in again? Exactly the same thing beginning in 1911, because Churchill understood the value of independence from the continent. And both times making the alliance was, previously, because he'd written about all of these alliances, right? Previously, Britain had several times in its history, always intending to rely upon its relative independence from the continent because of the Channel and the Navy, had made a decision to get involved in continental affairs. And each time it was an admission that they had lost a measure of that independence. As, by the way, I think we have today. And I think we have to struggle to maintain as much of it as is possible while recognizing that we have lost some of it. And that's why we need allies, right? China's got a bigger Navy than we've got. And we need allies that can contribute, so we don't subsidize them, because we can't afford to just subsidize them.
And that is a message well taken, especially as conflict with Iran looms and will remain looming, and China's watching. They can't really lose because we're going to expend armaments and munitions that we don't have, and our allies are going to have to be on watch. China's going to be watching. They might lose access to oil. We'll talk about all this in the weeks ahead. Don't go anywhere, America. Stay tuned to the Hillsdale Dialogue. This is part 20 in our series on Winston Churchill's World War II memoirs. They're all collected at hugh4hillsdale.com, and Dr. Arnn will be back right after the break to finish up talking about this. I will tell you in the meantime, though, all things Hillsdale, everything. Sign up for Imprimis, the newsletter, get the dialogue, get their video courses. Everything is at hillsdale.edu. You ought to mark it on your bookmarks at the top of your toolbar. You ought to take the classes to stay sharp and get smart about all things about the Constitution and the Republic, and how to get allies and maintain allies, and how to win wars, not merely wage them. All that collected at hillsdale.edu, especially Imprimis, the monthly speech digest, which is delivered to you the old-fashioned way, snail mail. 7 million plus people are subscribers to Imprimis. It's absolutely free. You ought to go there and just sign up for Imprimis if you don't do anything else. But, of course, listen to the Hillsdale Dialogues at hugh4hillsdale.com. I'll be right back with Dr. Larry Arnn, president of Hillsdale, right after this.
You know the Robertson family from the hit TV show Duck Dynasty. Now Hillsdale College offers you the unique opportunity to learn alongside the Robertsons as they dive deep into Hillsdale's online course, The Genesis Story. Every Friday on the Unashamed podcast, the Robertsons will share their insights and perspectives, learning from Hillsdale Professor of English Justin Jackson. Take a trip down south to Louisiana for this one-of-a-kind learning experience we call Unashamed Academy. Visit unashamedforhillsdale.com and enroll today. That's unashamed, F-O-R, Hillsdale.com to experience the Genesis story alongside the Robertsons.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. We are back with Dr. Larry Arnn for the last segment of this week's Hillsdale Dialogue. We're talking about alliances and why does Churchill have to get an alliance with France, and urging Neville Chamberlain to do so.
Churchill, they have the alliance with France because Churchill doesn't think they can fight Germany alone, and he thinks they're going to have to fight Germany. And therefore, you promise them what you can best contribute. And I don't know how many divisions Britain eventually had. It might have been 55. But promising them all to France, that's the kind of promise that's, if we can get there, and you got to carry the main weight on the land, because you're bigger than we are, and you're on the land, and we're not on that land. See, and so those were always Churchill's views about that stuff.
It's a fascinating chapter because he knows he does not want to continue on the war single-handed. He knew he would continue on the war. That's the one thing I wrote down in my notes to myself, which is he was never going to. But the movie that you went and helped contribute to with Gary Oldman, The Finest Hour, he knew they were never going to quit. But he didn't want to do it alone. He just didn't want to do it. He wanted France to be better than they were.
Yeah, well, you got to try to win, right?
Yeah.
If you're going to, step one, don't fight. Step two, win. You got to achieve one of those two things, and you really only fight if you have to fight. And like I do not want to fight China. Heritage Foundation coming out now has been getting some press called Tidal Wave, and what it is an AI study of what a war with China would look like. And we can't really fight China. They're not going to come over here and fight us, probably. Maybe through Canada, who knows? But the truth is, what this study shows, and it's partial and not complete yet, is that we would start running out of vital stuff in 3 weeks, and they would start running out of vital stuff in a year. And Trump is proposing a whacking big increase in the defense budget again. I hope it's for that.
Oh, it's $1.5 trillion. And when I've told legislators about that, they including appropriators, they kind of, their eyes roll back because it's a lot of money. We're spending $900 billion this year, so he wants to increase it by 75%. God love him. That's what Reagan did. That's what we need. And that is where we have to wrap up this week and part 20. We will be back in a week with a look at what is going on in China with President Trump, and then back into the gathering storm. You still have a lot of time to catch up with us, so please do all things Hillsdale at hillsdale.edu. All of the dialogues are collected at hughforhillsdale.com.
Thanks for listening to the Hillsdale Dialogues, part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. More episodes at podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you find your audio. For more information about Hillsdale College, head to hillsdale.edu.